Hello and welcome to a short overview of the Technics SL-1200GR2 turntable for AVForums. My name is Ed Selley, I'm the hi-fi editor for AVForums. I'm not a natural video person. This is probably going to be painfully apparent over the next few minutes, but this is the start of some more video content for hi-fi product, and who knows, with a lot of luck and some considerable practice I may become better at it. Anyway, the GR2 is, imaginatively enough, a replacement for the 1200GR, which was part of the original launch set of 1200 turntables back in 2016 and which we reviewed at the time. The significant difference between the two models is that the GR2 uses Delta Sigma drive. Now this sounds extremely exciting, almost science fiction when you sort of consider it in the abstract, but in reality what this means in essence is the Technics uses pulse width modulation, trying saying that 10 times quickly, to control the flow of electricity between the power supply and the direct drive motor. Pulse width modulation is, in its most basic form, a form of digital. It's either off or it's on, and this has a number of people online quite excited, the idea of a digital turntable. There's two things to consider about this. The first is that all of the significant parts of the Technics are as analog as they were beforehand. There's no USB output on this. There's absolutely no digitization happening between the cartridge and the audio output. All that the Technics is doing is using a very simple scientific principle to control the manner in which electricity reaches the motor and to ensure that it is free of interference, reduced in harmonics, and fundamentally time aligned. The other thing to consider is that this isn't the first time that we've seen this. A number of turntables, including some very high-end designs, use exactly the same principle for their power supplies. Technics is not doing anything particularly radical here, although I will say that their implementation is especially thorough. If you see people online saying that the preceding models are the last of the analog 1200s, I mean, it's true up until a point, but I wouldn't get too het up about it. The other principles of the 1200 haven't really been changed. This is because it's a design classic. You don't mess around with something that actually genuinely has cut through and can be recognised by, normal members of the human race. This means that you get far more controls than you would on a normal turntable, to a given value of normal. There's a pitch control, which I can't imagine actually is going to see much use for most domestic users. There's a queuing light, start-stop button, 33 and 45 are on separate buttons, press them both together and you get 78. Around the back there is an aperture for a supplied 45 RPM adapter if you've got jukebox style singles. I don't, so I haven't bothered to get it out of the box. Whilst it looks much the same, it doesn't actually feel the same. Technics hasn't made any great play about changing any significant sort of part on the 1200. The spiel on the website reads much the same as it did for the original GR. However, if we discount the GAE and some other special edition models, this is one of the nicest feeling samples that I can remember testing. The arm in particular feels an enormous amount more solid than I recall. Audio memory and indeed physical memory is a fragile thing, and Technics is making no great play of this, but I will say that this is a very confidence-inspiring bit of kit. This particular review sample has seen a bit of life before it's made it to me, so there are some cosmetic marks from uncaring reviewers, but nevertheless everything works in an entirely confidence-inspiring way. Those of you who firmly believe that the 1210, the black version of this, sounds better, good luck with that. There is indeed still an SL-1210GR2 as well, so if you want a black one, you can have one. The other thing that's worth bearing in mind and that hasn't changed is that there's still a huge amount of stretch in how this turntable can be used going forward. It comes out of the box with everything you need except a cartridge, and we'll come to that in a little bit. But if you feel like it, changing the mat, changing the headshell, looking at means of isolation, or indeed, once the warranty's expired, looking at some of the more significant aftermarket rebuilds, gives this turntable an enormous amount of design stretch that most of its rivals can't easily get near. You can buy this and it will develop with you over the time that you'll be using it. In terms of things that I don't like, it's not things that you can see around here. Back here are the connections, and whoever put these in place is something of a sadist. The main supply is tucked underneath the rear panel at 90 degrees to the rear panel on an IEC socket, which is then essentially upside down. I mean, there's no particular given way up for it, but the smaller pin is at the bottom. And it's an absolute pain in the arse to fit. There's no getting around it. It's hateful. I don't understand why it's been done that way. I don't see what benefit it is supposed to provide. The audio connections are barely less inaccessible. They are tucked in and at an angle on the underside. The ground port points downwards, which is sometimes a useful thing, but not exclusively a useful thing. Most of the swearing you're going to do at this turntable will be at the point where you're trying to put it together. After that, it's extremely painless to live with. And there's a sort of a confidence-inspiring way that these direct drive turntables work that I know is enormously appealing to a lot of people, and I will say has grown on me over the time that I've been using them as well. Hit that start button, the platter gets up to speed pretty much within a single rotation, and it stops instantly when you press stop. And if you want it to stop even faster, there are torque adjustment settings underneath the platter as well. You get a lid, you get most of the accessories that you'd need in a box. As I've noted, the headshell is an area where I'd change it. It looks quite smart, and it's not the same headshell that was supplied with the original units, although it did change before the GR2 came out, because I have encountered it before. It has a sloped top. It's hard to see on the camera, but nevertheless, the top is not completely flat. The screw indentations are, but it does mean that fitting any cartridge in a specific point on the headshell is just that little bit harder than I think it needs to be. It would be something that I'd get changed relatively early on in the life of the turntable. Now, some largely subjective observations on performance. Most of these are going to be in the written review, which will be on the site. I'm more comfortable expanding at length in words rather than in speech. But the long and the short of it is that this is a genuinely impressive bit of kit. It does all of the things that I would hope and expect a 1200 to do. There's that enormous feeling of propulsive force and energy and control. Pitch stability is, as you might imagine, extraordinarily good. Technics says it's better than it was on the original GR, but given that the original GR was outstanding in this regard, you're going to struggle to tell. But nevertheless, you play long sustained notes on the 1200GR2, and there's not even a hint of waver. If you've been less than keen on vinyl up until this point because you can hear that sort of instability, this is where you need to stop looking, because it's going to sort that out instantly. It does all the things I would expect it to do, but it has moved on as well. Tying these improvements to what Technics has done under the skin with the Delta Sigma drive, updated power supply, etc. It's not that easy to do. All I would say is that the power socket is the only point on a turntable where electricity reaches it. All of this assembly is completely passive. Anything that makes it to the playing surface is going to be picked up by that cartridge, and it is going to affect performance. There does appear to be a damn sight less negative material reaching the playing surface on this turntable. When you choose to play something less boisterous, not something that you heard in a club on one of these for the first time out, this is by far and away the most satisfying experience I've had listening to that. There is a smoothness, a lack of force, a lack of sort of restlessness that is maddeningly subjective. But if you listen to something delicate, something which isn't, you know, there to get you bouncing up and down, this is by far and away the most composed 1200 that I can remember testing for this sort of purpose. The other area which has improved, and again, audio memory is a fragile thing, but compared to both the Mark 7 that we tested the year before and the notes that I have on the original GR, this is a more spacious sounding turntable. Now, this shouldn't be confused with sounding big. 1200s are very good at sounding big. They've got substantial bass response. It's a very clean and very even frequency response. What this does is just give you a bit more space around the recording itself. So when you listen to something well recorded and large scale, it just sounds effortless. It sounds convincing. It sounds as it should. What I really like about this is that it's been done without messing around with any of the basics, any of the reasons why you would have bought one of these turntables historically. It simply is an old dog with some new tricks, which is always an advantageous state of being. Would I buy one? Yes. Do you know what? I reviewed the Mark 7 last year. The review is on the website, and I loved the Mark 7. But when I sort of expressed a desire to have it, I want it in addition to the multiple turntables I already have because I'm deranged. It's a unique and exciting way of revisiting sort of club classics. It has a very particular presentation. This is something that you'd buy as an only turntable, and buy happily as an only turntable. It's very, very capable. It has an all-round ability which has been honed and improved and is more than was the case previously without losing any of the things that the previous version did so well. It doesn't have the market to itself. It pitches in once you start pricing in cartridges and so on and so forth at about the same price as the Riga Planer 8 or the Michel Techno Deck or various offerings from Project. These are all belt drive designs. They have different pros and cons. In some regards I prefer the aesthetic, and there's a delicacy which even this slightly revised GR2 doesn't necessarily always get near. Nevertheless, I can see lots of people going for the Technics and being absolutely delighted with the purchase that they make. There's a quick word to be said on cartridges here as well. The Technics obviously doesn't come with a cartridge. Some people have marked it down for that. I don't think it's particularly unusual, and I like the fact that you have got free choice. I would also say that, you know, comments on the headshell aside, this is not a particularly difficult turntable to fit and get up and running with almost any cartridge that you would realistically want to place on it. Most of the testing has taken place with a Gold Note Vasari Shibata, the review for which is on the website as well. Some sighting has been done with an Audio-Technica OC9 moving coil, because that was what was used on the Mark 7, so it provided a sort of useful bridging point. The good news is you can choose both without any fear that the counterweight arrangement is going to struggle. You can also adjust the height of the arm over the playing surface, which is going to ensure that it doesn't really matter how large the cartridge is, it's going to fit. I would also say that the work that Technics has done has made for a more transparent, more cohesive, more open turntable. It's going to reflect the choice of cartridge and phono stage that you make on it, and it should sound pretty good. If you've enjoyed this, against logical reason, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It sounds like a vague threat, but there's likely to be more of these. And of course, the full review, where I say less and other notional benefits, is available on the site for you to read at leisure. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.